Hello everyone, GM here. I sincerely hope you are having a wonderful day and you are all healthy and well. This is a quick heads up regarding the video that you are about to watch. The video, as before, is an excerpt from a discussion between myself and Dr. Dean Radin. In this particular clip, we focus on the correct mindset of a mystic, the correct mindset for doing mystical works and walking the mystical path. Now, there are several exercises that I discuss and go through, which all of you can work on as soon as you like. In particular, though, there is one exercise that I described to Dean called the black mirror exercise. The black mirror exercise, you will understand and see very quickly, can be very, very powerful, but also very, very dangerous in the wrong hands. So, just to let the people out there that would wish to use this information for the wrong reason, you need to know that I have left certain elements out. And without these certain elements, none of the black mirror exercise will work for you. That being said, oh, and by the way, my explanation of the black mirror exercise to Dean is a hypothetical version, and it has been put and said in such a scenario that very, very easy to understand by everyone. Okay, that being said, I hope you thoroughly enjoy this chat, as did I and Dean, and that's the end of that.
I have two questions I'd like to hear you talk about a little bit. One is that you did this test with 3 balloons, with 2 clear balloons, and then a third one inside. It was a
One of
black
the
balloon.
pressure tests, yeah.
Yeah, you broke the one in the center, and I've showed that to a bunch of my colleagues, and the only suggestion they had that if it was a trick would be an infrared laser. And I pointed out, though, that that doesn't match what actually happened because the inner balloon deformed before it popped. A laser is not going to do that. In fact, nobody could think of a conventional way of actually doing that. So I wanted to hear you then describe, first of all, what you did, and then why you think it worked.
Someone asked me if it was possible for that to be done, and I'm going to answer the last question first here. I said, I don't know. Let's see. That is why I think it worked, because I had no doubt.
Well, no, you just said you didn't know, right? You didn't know if it would work, so you try an experiment. That means that it wasn't a matter of not having doubt. You didn't know if it was going to work or
It was
not.
neutral, yeah. It was absolutely neutral. I had no doubt that it wouldn't work. I had no
Okay,
inspiration that it would work. It was
nothing got in the way of it happening.
absolutely,
Got it. Yeah.
absolutely neutral, and it always has to be that way. Always, the knowing is there, but you haven't turned it into thinking, and this is where faith comes in. Knowing that you know, getting back to the "do you love your wife" thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very important. Um, what did I do? Let me go. Tell me if I've gone through this with you already before. There would have been a time when you were a child, and I do believe you were a child once.
I'm still a child.
Excellent. And there would have been a point, and this has happened to me and many other people I've talked to about this. When you get there and you've got a bunch of rocks and you're in the forest or in your back garden with a friend and you start throwing a rock at a tree, First time you throw the rock, you go bang, and it hits the tree dead on, exactly where you focused on it, and you thought, wow, I didn't know I could do that. So you do it again and you miss the next 10 times. And what you find out is, this is how I did it, if I looked away and I just waited until there was no thoughts, I wasn't old enough to stop them, but there are moments when it does just stop. So I wait until there's absolutely no thought. When that clarity, I was trying to reproduce the whole throwing the rock the first time without thinking about it. So, and I was thinking about the baseball players you have in the States. They'll look away, they wait a moment, and then they throw the ball and they hit the glove every time. So this is what I wanted to do. So I look away, no thoughts, nothing whatsoever. And in that moment, look at the tree and throw the rock. The moment your sight gets onto the tree, you just throw the rock and it will hit every single time. Then I started studying Zen archery specifically. And I realized that I was actually doing something that is a real exercise. It's what they do. They will sit with their bow pointing upwards. They've got their finger on the string, and they wait until there is no thought of self, no thought of the bow, no thought of the target. When there's no thought splitting everything up, everything is one. And at that moment of oneness, you draw and you let go. You don't aim. If you aim, your egos come back into it. Every single time they hit the mark right in the dead center, to the point where they can do it on a galloping horse.
Mm.
That is how I approach the balloon. If you notice, it's been a long time. I don't remember the clip, to be honest. I know I did it, but I don't look at it. It would have been, I would have talked, I would have put the balloon down, I would have taken a moment, not focusing, not concentrating, just let everything go, and then I feel for the balloon. The first two balloons aren't there in my mind. I'm feeling for the black one. And that's all that I did. And then when I look, and then it popped, which that wasn't the intention. The intention was to just move it and see if I wanted to do this. And once again, it gets back to the extension of doing that. And that was it, really. So
you and the balloon were one.
yes, we still are.
Still?
Oh,
Well, I mean, yes, we're one with everything, but
yes.
but so sometimes we're more one with some things than others.
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, because I think of this sometimes when we do a telepathy experiment in the lab. And in order for us to see that we did something correct, it has to be this person and that person, not this person and the rest of the universe, because there'd be no way to evaluate it.
I know, yeah.
So there's some ability, just as you can focus in an ordinary state on something, and even in that expanded mind state, it seems like you can sort of, you can contract what you're going to pay attention to. So with you and the balloon were one then, but it was more one than maybe the rest of the oneness, which doesn't make any sense, but I think you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah. So for me, it's like, see, I don't have all of that. It's always just one, always. It only breaks up when you have to talk about it, when you have to think about it, when you have to discuss it. I think someone needs to come up with a machine, and I know everyone's trying to do this, including you, that can observe, not necessarily quantify, but perhaps observe the movement of consciousness and see what happens when, obviously you would have to be able to turn the consciousness into some kind of a visual. And then when you do drop the ego, does the consciousness automatically expand? The expansion of space, let's say the Big Bang actually happened. When manifestation occurred, the expansion of space, which apparently had to be faster than light, otherwise light would have just kept up with it the whole way.
There was no light yet.
No. So it was the fastest thing there is. So that expansion of space, is that when space became self-aware? does consciousness automatically expand? When you drop the ego but still aware, does the consciousness automatically expand? Because the ego keeps you in this not part of the oneness.
Mm-hmm.
It's what keeps you separate. So there's all of these things. There's lots of things. I was thinking about this a lot, just in case you asked me about some exercises today. I was thinking about what is it? What are the ingredients of enlightenment and magic? And there's a handful.
Go, yes.
Oh, shit.
Okay, I'll let that bubble in the back of your mind, and I'll ask you a question first, which might spark something. So this is the notion that you become one with the object of your attention. That's
You can't have
very
that either. You can't have that notion. You just have to have, you just know already. This is, to me, this is where the time comes into it, whether you believe in time or not. The time that if you're going to be a motor car mechanic, there would be a point where you'd go, hey, I'm good at this. I didn't realize I would be good at this, but I'm good at this. And the more time you put into it, the better you become. The more time you put into it, the more things you can drop from your knowing, because you can just do it now without a single thought. You can do your work. You can talk to a friend and do up a nut. I mean, who can't do that? But as you get better and better, you become more and more confident, less and less doubts, to a point where you should be able to take your car to, let's say you bought a Volvo, you take your Volvo to a Ford dealer, and your Ford dealer goes, oh, I've never touched one of these before, but hey, I've been a mechanic for 50 years. I'm sure I can do it. That's the confidence. He's never seen the engine, but he has no doubt that if it's an engine, if it's an internal combustion engine, he will fix it. No doubt whatsoever. This is what you have to have as a mystic. You don't have to talk yourself into being one with everything. You don't have thoughts of, oh, I'm not one with everything right now because I'm using my ego. None of that. That has to
right.
go. And for me, it's a matter of permanently, as I'm speaking to you right now, literally, as I'm speaking to Dean, I feel the intent of what it is I want to get across. I see my intent being turned into a thought process, into picture form, I guess. And then there's another part of the brain that turns the pictures into grunts. The grunts that you and I would mutually accept means this, this, or that. The manual, of course, would be the dictionary. And then I see that come out, and I watch this all the time. I'm constantly aware that when I'm thinking, I'm choosing thoughts. I'm not allowing thoughts that shouldn't be there to come into it. Of course, they slip in and out every now and then, but the fact is that by being constantly aware of them, you probably stop 95% of the delusions that come in with the ego when you start engaging life from the ego. Things like, oh, I have to get into a certain mode to be able to do this, or I have, oh, that's right, I have to convince and remember that I am one with the all. All of that has to go.
Right, but that is said from the point of view of somebody who's been doing this for many decades. And if you're starting, you can't jump to that, because it would be like saying when you're describing intuiting or just knowing what to do, that I would interpret as some forms of it is forgotten knowledge.
Mm.
So, but when I was playing the violin, I would practice 1 to 4 hours a day because I was on career track to be a violinist. And after a couple of years, there was no thought at all about how to play complex pieces, right? You have the music sheet in front of you and just glance at it and play it, and at the same time read a book.
Mm.
And the playing level was sometimes even better if I wasn't paying that much attention to it, because my body knew what to do and some aspect of my mind knew what to do. So that's taking lots of practice and incorporating it into your being.
Yes, becoming one with it. Yes.
Yes, you've become one with the instrument. Yeah, it's true. So you can't start that on day one. You get some 5-year-old and say, "Be one with the instrument," and then that's not going to work. So in a book form, I have to assume that even if somebody is a highly practiced person knowing about all this stuff, I still have to repeat it because you never know who's going to read the book. A lot
Yeah.
of people don't know anything. So you start from first principles, like, well, now what? Oh, well, now sit down and be quiet. Okay, well, that's a good start.
Yeah.
So now you sit down, be comfortable. Okay, that's step one. And that may take years for people to get to, because as you know, at beginning meditation, your monkey mind is constantly going, and it takes time and effort to make that go away.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the statement, the mystic becomes one with everything. Well, okay, we can sort of understand that intellectually, but getting it viscerally is an entirely different matter.
Mm.
So
Mm.
many steps between, or maybe not so many steps. Maybe it's a very simple step, but you just need to do it diligently every day for X amount of time.
A very, very small amount of steps, but it's like the koan, actually. All the koans have absolutely the same answer. 1,700 koans, the answer is the same for all of them. But,
Seven.
yeah,
What's the answer? 42.
oh, I just gave you the answer.
Um,
No, you're thinking, you just lost. You'd be getting smacked around the head by a big stick now if you were in Japan.
well, the answer is either yes or 42.
The answer is silence. What is the sound of one
Uh,
hand clapping?
yeah.
You
So,
watch all the noises your friggin' brain's going to come up with. Things like this, you know. What's the sound of one hand clapping? Just
yeah.
listen.
Yeah.
That's
We don't, it's the absence of sound.
yeah. But in that moment, if you do it just right, a koan is like medicine. If it's not timed right, it won't work at all. If it does work, it won't be very efficient. So the timing is when you've got someone almost at a sub-hypnotic point, that point where they are just waiting for a cue, where they are focused and they're relaxed, but they don't want to move on the inside because they're waiting for the next um, sentence to come out of the teacher or whatever. When you get to that point, you ask the koan, and if if they go into dead silence for a moment, and then the ego will come back up and start guessing. And if you've done it correctly, inside their head, they'll go, and they'll be astonished for the first time
Mm.
ever they saw this ego thing come up like another entity. That's it. That's enlightenment. They will never, ever, ever fall back into that thing ever again.
Mm.
And that's how it happens. That's what a koan does every single time.
Mhm.
And that's what the Blue Cliff Record is all about.
The Blue Cliff Record. Yes, you mentioned that. So I wonder if you can have an entire book of instruction, a book of magical instruction that is only koans. Of course, you need a
That
teacher to
is one.
know,
That is
right? I
one.
mean, as you were just saying that the teacher needs to know when they're right at the precipice,
Yes,
right?
that's the skill.
And you can't do that in a book because you have no idea where somebody is. I
Yeah.
wonder if there's a way to like lead somebody through stories up to the point where then you give the koan, and you may have made him go into that point where just a little tweak will do it.
You study trance and hypnosis, study the both trance work and hypnosis, and then you learn to discern when someone's in a trance state or on the brink.
Mm.
And if you study hypnosis, and I'm not talking about clinical hypnosis where you sit down and have someone relax their toes and relax their feet, systematic desensitization, not that.
Hmm.
Getting someone into hypnosis in a moment and being able to perceive when they're there. With women, it's different. Women, they blink more. They'll go like that. But any question will do it. If I ask you what color is the wardrobe in your bedroom, for half a second, you have to leave here. You have to leave my presence and go back in and start looking through the filing cabinets in your head.
Hmm.
You go, oh, it's green, and then it'll come back out and show you your wardrobe. But during that moment, you're in a trance state, and that's when you will. Yeah, I'll give you two good for instances here. This is how it works. This is a good practice for anyone. Thousands of years ago, if you and I were walking in opposite directions, let's say on the Silk Road, we would have gone like this. This is me showing you I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to rob you. I don't have a knife or a sword. And you're doing the same to me, hopefully. Eventually, over time, that became a handshake over thousands of years. Even today, now it is so ingrained in you that if you walk down the street and go, hi, my name's Dean, and you put your hand out to shake someone's hand, 9 out of 10 total strangers will just shake your hand. It's just inbuilt. You just do it.
Mm.
So if you say, hi, my name is Dean, when someone goes to shake your hand, they don't have to think. It's inbuilt, and they will just do it automatically. And they are expecting a certain result. They're expecting the grip, they're expecting the shake, and they're expecting a grin. And then this nice feeling of you've just made contact with a human being. So you go, hi, my name is Dean. When they go to grab your hand, you don't meet them halfway. You go a little bit further and you grab their hand quite tightly. Straight away, you've just interrupted the flow. They're going into a trance now. And instead of the shake, you turn the hand around towards them and you go, close your eyes and look at the palm of your hand. Now you just gave them a conundrum as well. And you put the hand there and you go, now their brain's going, tell me what to do, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. They're fucked in the head at that moment. And you go, sleep. And they go, okay. And they're gone. That's
Mm.
called a snap induction. It's the same if someone's tying a shoelace, exactly the same. You've been tying your shoelace since you were 5 years old, earlier if you're clever. And once again, if someone is bent over on the ground, 40 years old, and they're tying a shoelace, you just put your hand on top of their hand and press on it so they can't tie their shoelace, and they'll go, and they'll look at you. You'll see in their eyes, they're not there for this moment. And you go, just sleep. And they'll go, okay, and they'll just fall asleep. You got
Huh.
to catch them because they'll break their nose when they hit the ground. I do it all the time.
So what do you call it? Snap what?
Snap induction.
Huh. Interesting.
When it comes to the breaking expectation, it also does the same thing. There's one called a zap induction, which I learned from a Chinaman. I don't remember his name. Probably in a gulag somewhere now. But this is my favorite. You can walk up to anyone in the supermarket, and you say, have you ever been hypnotized? If they go, yes, good. If they say no, that's good too, because they're interested. If they say yes, that's good because they have a social proofing that it can happen. And you go, would you mind trying a little experiment with me? They'll go, yes, of course. You go, okay, I'm going to take your arm. On the count of 3, I'm going to give your arm a jerk, and you're going to fall into a hypnotic sleep, and you're just going to lay down on the ground in front of me. You won't be hurt. Don't worry, nothing will happen. They'll go, yep, that sounds like fun. On the count of 3. So you go 1, bang, and you interrupt them, and they go down to the ground, and then you have to roll them over and tell them, don't worry, you're safe, and you're on the ground, and you're under hypnosis right now, and I'm talking to you. So that's another way of doing it. So that's one exercise we used to do a lot. In the monasteries, we would do this to each other as well. So it's learned. You don't do it so much. Many things come from it. Your confidence goes through the roof because you realize you have this control over the human mind. Why can't I do it to myself is supposed to be the next question. And of course you can. You have the social proofing to yourself that this works every time. You realize that if you don't have the confidence, it doesn't actually work. You realize that you can see now, you recognize, you can discern when someone is not there. You can discern when they're in a trance. You can discern. I use it these days to discern whether someone is being schizophrenic but trying to hide it from me. You just learn to be able to discern the different states of consciousness. Of course, you can also use the Kabbalistic tree of life because the 10 sephirah represent 10 different states of mind that any human being can go in and out of at any moment of any day, and they do. So you start to apply that to your observations. And then the next step is an exercise called black mirroring, which I still teach people today. And black mirroring is taking over someone's willpower remotely and hypnotizing them remotely without them knowing you're doing it. That's very powerful, very simple, very spooky. You want elaboration?
Sure.
Of
I
course.
have a black mirror.
Yeah.
And, it's part of the accoutrements having to do with scrying behavior.
Yeah. Nostradamus used to use black ink quite a lot. Yeah, I've tried that one. Black mirroring. Okay. This comes into the same realm of teaching that we call transmission of mind beyond the teaching. There's actually a book on the subject as well. Very difficult to get, but I have it somewhere. So very basically, this is what happens. You go to a cafe, you sit in a cafe, and you choose a victim somewhere in the room, someone you don't know, they don't know you. The only thing you need to do up front, pre-work, is make sure everyone knows you've walked in. So when you walk in, just be straight, be strong, make sure you are a presence. You walk in and then you sit down and then you melt into the background and everyone forgets you're there. So then you've picked a subject, someone sitting by themselves, reading a paper, having a coffee and a little piece of cake. Now you're working in their peripheral. So whenever they go to drink their coffee, with the same hand, you would just scratch your nose or you would just adjust your glasses. If they scratch the back of their head, you might have a little stretch. So you're mirroring them. Subconsciously, peripherally, they're watching you. It's going in, but they don't notice it. It's otherwise they would be uncomfortable. You do this for about 20 minutes. If they shift in the chair, you shift. If they make this hand movement, you do the same thing. If they start doing this in the chair, you do the same thing, but not so obvious. You would just put your hand there, perhaps. After 20 minutes, you make the first move, and if you've done your work correctly, they will start to mirror you without realizing it. So you would just change arms and pick your cup up with your other arm, and they would do the same. After a minute or so, it's very easy for you to realize you've got them now. You've black mirrored them. From that point on, you can start to yawn and you can just start to pretend to drift off, and you'll see them doing exactly the same thing. Once they drift off and they start to yawn, you need to get them in this position. Once they're in that position, you can get up, walk past them, just lean over and go, "You're having a wonderful day and you have my blessings, and I thank you so very much for paying for my cake and my coffee." And then you walk away, and they do. They just pay for it. They have no memory of doing it, but they do it every time. That's called black mirroring. So you're learning to get control from a distance, remotely. Lots of questions come from that, of course.
Right. So there's questions of ethics. There's question of just the mechanics of it, like how much in their peripheral vision do you can't be completely behind them, presumably, because they can't see you. So off to the side, so that they could turn and look directly, but they could also see peripherally.
Yeah. Aleister Crowley can do it. Aleister Crowley does it without peripheral vision. He was extraordinarily good at it.
Mm.
He could walk behind a stranger on the street and get in absolute synchronization with the person's steps and their gait and their body movement. He would get into literally cellular mirroring almost. Everything would be exactly the same. And then when he had them, when he knew that he was exactly in sync with them, he would purposefully stumble. And the person in front would also stumble and fall over quite often. So there's that as well.
So in popular culture, this is the Jedi mind trick.
Yes, pretty much.
These are not the droids that you know. And there have been experimental tests to show not only in peripheral vision, but actually really separated, not close to them at all, in the laboratory, to show that one person's attention on another person can cause changes in that other person's attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and this is not with people who are highly trained at it, but simply you're given the task to distract that person doing some kind of task, and it does make a difference.
Yeah, yeah. So is that saying that the question then is, are you making contact, or was the contact always there because we are all one anyway?
Well, it's related to this question of why are we not inundated with information all the time? If we are one with everything, we should be like it's all there all the time. It would make your brain blow up.
It is. This is the point of the mystic, and this is where enlightenment comes in. You can't know something that, how can I put this? You can't think of something you don't already know. You have to know it to think it. And if you sit back correctly in meditation, you can watch your knowing turning into a thought. There's exercises. You still, one is you still your mind, and when there's nothing going on in there, and it happens very short moments, anyone can do this, but only for short moments. But in that moment of a blank mind, inside your head, you count 1, 2, 3, and you watch it popping up until you get really good at it and you see where those thoughts are coming from and where they're popping up. Then the next step is to find the 1, 2, 3 before it gets turned, when it's just knowing that there is 1, 2, and 3, just the knowing of it before it turns into a thought. And then so you're learning to fine tune your inner sight, third eye, for want of a better word. And you learn to discern the difference between knowing and thinking, and you realize there's a huge difference. And once you start to engage life from that knowing, you realize that all of the things that consciousness has ever been in, all of the things, this is hard to put into words, all of the things that consciousness has ever been in form-wise, all of the physical forms that consciousness has ever been in and come out of, whether you want to call it spirit or whatever, it retains the knowledge, it retains the knowing. I shouldn't say the knowledge, that's a different thing. It retains the knowing of all things that it has ever been. It retains it because it wants to know what it is. It's discovering itself, it's learning about itself, so it retains the knowing. The thinking is purely for the matter, it's purely for the brain. And of course, you know this already, once you leave the body, you don't take the brain with you, and you start engaging life from the pure knowing, because you don't have a brain to be turning that knowing into picture form so that the monkey you inhabit can get its head around it as well. So that, once you get to that level, it's not something that can be told, it's not something that can be passed on, it's something that you need to do.
Mm-hmm.